Welcome back to a special episode of Keepin It Rural, specifically on the What a Hoot podcast. Today, this episode is not just about agricultural education, but truly about rural education across our nation. And we are so excited to have the most qualified person to talk about this today. This is Miss Jenny Mars. Jenny is a business teacher at Morris area schools, and she is recently been named the National Rural Educator of the Year. Seriously, like this is a big deal. So Natasha and I have hopped on today to talk to Jenny, and we are so excited to learn from you. So Miss Jenny, welcome. Thanks for being here today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, good morning. And my excitement is hard to contain. So thank you so much for having me. Sincerely, truly. So I'm the kid that knew I wanted to be a teacher the day I knew what teaching was. I grew up on a dairy farm in west central Minnesota. And, after saying goodbye to grandpa and dad in the barn and ran down the driveway and got on a school bus, my life changed truly forever. And so I owe a lot to that 5-year-old kid who saw that this was my path at my mature old age of 5. As I rolled through both elementary and into junior high, I knew that teaching was the passion. I just didn't know which route until I stepped into a business class at Benson High School in Minnesota, and I just knew that was my path. I was super drawn to the practicality. Both of my business teachers set really high expectations, and I continuously not only met, but crushed those expectations. And I just knew that business weaves into almost every industry, whether it's running the local grocery store or a family farm. Like business has its roots in nearly every industry. So I just knew that teaching kids about that was my calling. And so by ninth grade, I knew business education was for me. And 22 years later, I still owe it to that 5-year-old who followed her dream and continues daily to share all of that legally rural passion with anyone who steps into my classroom.
It is amazing to think back on the childhood dreams we all had. And it's like, when you were a little kid, what was your dream job, right? And you're over here crushing it, doing exactly what your 5-year-old self wanted to do. Like, not many people can say that. Props to you, Jenny.
Thank you. I don't remember at age 5 running home and doing this, but I did because we've got picture proof. My first classroom had very humble means. My parents let me transform an old room up in our 4 square farmhouse into my very humble first classroom. And I've got the best picture proof to show it. And when my friends would come over, we'd play school. And then it was really cool because I got to go to my friend's house whose mom was a teacher, and we had the real school materials like the lesson planning books and the attendance books and our Cabbage Patch Kids. We owe a lot to them too, because that's part of the story.
Of course. Jenny and I have a long background of knowing
We
each
do.
other, which is not why she's on this podcast. However, we grew up in the same community. We're only a year apart in school
Yep.
and then taught together at Morris for many years. And one thing that I always really admired about Jenny was just her passion just explodes everywhere, no matter what she's involved
Yeah, it's
in.
hard to tame, isn't that?
Yeah. And you've always been like that your whole life. And I've been able to watch that. And I think being in a rural community, I'm really curious to know, what do you think about rural kids and why do you think that you love to be with them? Like, what is it about the rural community that you love to actually teach in?
Well, you stick around long enough. I'm close. Now my former students have kids trickling up, and it gives me goosebumps. Oh, and I'm wearing a sweater for silly. But like that multi-generation, like deep rooted traditions, and sometimes they're hard to break, right? Like
Yeah.
I do feel that kids feel that pressure to come home, but I like to normalize it and say, this is home. And maybe it's not this rural community, but so many of them go back to rural communities. And
Mhm.
so to have a front row seat to all of that, these deep rooted multi generations that have been Morris Tigers or residents of Stevens County since the settlers settled here and dropped their bags, like that's really exciting to see. And what I've learned in this whole process, rural means something different to everybody. I'm really proud of our little nook on the prairie out here in west central Minnesota because business is booming here. We're adding
Mhm.
stores, we're adding restaurants, whereas some are closing their doors and becoming ghost towns. And so it's really exciting to be part of like an economic hub where people come to Morris to do their shopping or to do their things, and then to watch these multi-generation, whether it's business owners or family farms where they want to come back. And then for me to normalize, that's okay. Come back. We want you back. And I get to
Mhm.
see those come on to my class rosters. Like that full circle is what is really special as a rural educator
Mhm.
in this community. So
Jenny, what is it about Morris that is making it such a hub of success?
I think it goes back to that deep rooted family dynamic. Like kids want to come back here
Mhm.
and it's cool to come back. And not that I'm a real research based person, but this is my next step. I want to do research on how many of our graduates come back to even like a 5 county area
Right.
because that's remarkable. And I think that's what keeps us such a hub. Morris has an eclectic offering. We have a 4-year school here. We have 2-year programs within an hour reach of here. So not only is there jobs here, but there's other opportunities to grow. And there's so many industries that say, just come to us right away. Like we'll train you, we'll teach you. And so I think that interconnected, like close knit piece. Like kids know that they can do well in this community. And that isn't just a monetary measurement. Like there's so many opportunities with just
Mhm.
that eclectic nature of our community. So it's really cool.
Now, one thing that really interests me about doing this podcast today is I and Bekka obviously are very passionate about career and technical education, being both ag ed background people. And your business, which is career and technical education. I know when I was in Morris and we taught in the same cohort of career and technical education, we banded together pretty tight. And we found that our success was because of the ability to work together. And I don't know if that happens everywhere. Maybe it does. But I think as a whole, career and technical education, like you being a representative of the National Rural Teacher of the Year as a CTE teacher is really cool because
Yeah.
it's open to any teacher, right? So you are able to tell the story of career and technical education. I'm also very curious to know your thoughts on why career and technical education is not only important in rural schools, but really more so, how have you developed a career and technical education program along with other people in Morris? How do you work together? And how are you really reflecting the community? Like, how are you doing that in your classrooms?
So this is a really exciting topic for me. And there again, it runs really deep in who I am as an educator and that collaborative nature that I'm drawn to literally at every turn. We do have a really strong career and technical education program, and we are super excited to share that with others. So, as I level up here, I'll just explain the several facets of it. So, within our school, the ag department is blessed with 2 teachers. I'm a solo artist, as is our fax teacher. And so, we really do band together as a department. We think of ourselves as the career and technical education department. I just happen to be the business teacher. And we are constantly doing huge, not just like little events, huge events that involve 400 people, whether it's our junior high career day or our college and career fair or just the advocacy to get other what we're going to call core areas just into it. For example, we've been teaching the science department how to mimic our career day with a science lens. So we get really excited about just what career and tech ed stands for just within our school. Okay. Outside of our school, the whole nature of CTE is that it parallels the needs of our community. So we are constantly changing. I don't know if I've ever really taught the same thing the same way twice. I'm constantly asking for help from industry leaders, and they don't necessarily know how to come into the school. They know how to come into the current tech ed classes because we have them all the time, nearly daily. But
Hmm.
just to like break down any stereotypes that we can't coexist, we are leaders in our community and school for that as the CTE teachers. The collaborative nature of what we all do is so exciting. On any given week, I could easily have 15 different professionals either coming in or going out. The upstanding joke is that the bus just sits in the parking lot waiting to take us somewhere because we are that engaged. And just when I think, oh my gosh, what more can I do? Another email or phone call arrives in my inbox. And then as I'm teaching, I'm the old gal on the block now because we have very young ag and a new fax teacher. I get to share that knowledge and they're just crushing it as well, just because it's the expectation really of our rural community that we will partner with each other. And then beyond that, we're very blessed to be part of the Lakes Country Consortium where they bring in all the job alikes. And so many of my colleagues are like, oh, I wish there was a science one or I wish there was a social studies one. And to go just an hour away to collaborate with 30 other business teachers, in my case, is really exciting. And then from that, now I am part of like a digital media consortium and I'm part of a personal finance consortium. So we're actually writing curriculum for area teachers. And then from there, people want to come hang out with us. And the advocacy work there is far reaching. Just before Christmas break, I had a teacher who's fairly new to education, not new to the working world. This is her second career. She came from a suburb in the Twin Cities just to hang out with students and myself in Morris for a day. And so it's not limited to just rural, but I think that rural spirit is contagious. And when I have a teacher from the suburbs of the Twin Cities wanting to drive 3 hours to come see us and hang out with us, she was blown away. She's like, when do you grade? And I'm like, well, we don't have time. We're going on a field trip. Right.
Right.
So it's just that
Right.
collaborative nature that truly is contagious.
Yeah.
And I think that's the heart of what CTE is.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So beautiful.
As a younger educator, for sure, and watching some of my colleagues in other schools, specifically in ag ed, but certainly in other areas too, the struggle is how do I bridge that gap between industry and teacher and not just the simple advice of just ask, right? But
Right.
how do you help them see that we don't speak two different languages? What you do in your shop
Mhm.
every single day or what you do in your business is the same as what we can be doing in the classroom. How do you help provide that knowledge and that transparency to those businesses in your community?
I always tell teachers specifically, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. And you are not going to, as a fairly new educator or an old one who just is looking to improve, you don't swing that dial way over. Just swing it a little bit, grow a little bit. At the Minnesota Rural Educators Association conference, I was blessed to teach our future educators in a few breakout sessions. And so I had them put the pen to paper and I said, all right, when you get hired, go do this. Go find one community member. Or maybe it's your neighbor, maybe it's the person at the grocery store. And then what are you going to do in the first month? And what are you going to do in the first semester? So setting truly smart goals that make that attainable, but then just moving the dial a little bit. So the old dog that's looking to learn some new tricks, if you've never invited a community member in, invite one, because then one will turn into 21 really quick. And I think you have to teach the students what to do, and you have to teach the industry leaders what to do. The stigma is that little kids are scary and teenagers are even more scary. And that is simply not true. So the hidden excitement is that we get to break down all those stigmas. Send students off the bus. They go shake the hand of whoever we are touring. They wave us in. So they do that small talk. I try to not have it be me. And so those soft skills that are being built are like untouchable as far as like amazingness, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we're leaving school for an hour. Yes, we're going to, say, the funeral home to visit. That's in my personal finance class in our end of life unit. So if I send students off the bus, they go shake hands, they lead the pack as far as making sure questions are being asked and correct questions, and then send a thank you afterwards. Yeah, that takes a lot of work, but now it comes to when I've built it to where I have, they expect us to come. Oh, yep, it's that time of year. We've got you on the calendar. So
Mhm.
I just, as I tell my story, where I literally involve as many community members as I can, that can be a super overwhelming story to a brand new teacher. And so I have to just teach them like
Mhm.
the little steps to get there. And I'm a phone call or email away to help them. Rural advocacy is now my next passion. So how do I not only teach in-house folks how to do it, because that's starting to work, right? They live in the Morris community. Morris expects it. But how do I go to the school? Like, for example, the teacher from the South Metro, busing is an issue there. We would never be able to get a bus. And I'm like, well, here's
Right.
how, right? So don't look at those as roadblocks. Look at those as opportunities. Have kids help you find how to figure out how to get around on a bus.
Is there anything that you found successful in helping those industry leaders be prepared and not necessarily scared or intimidated by the idea of high schoolers coming in? How do you help them hit the target on this is what the high schoolers need to hear instead of, well, this is what you could do in college to prepare?
Certainly. Early on, it's literally giving them talking points. Like, here's what I'd suggest putting it back on the students, like having them ask questions. Anytime we can touch, feel, taste, like that all makes things just so much better. And incentivizing things. Kids love a pen or silly trinkets or merch. Early on, I provided really coaching, if you will, but now they just are so good. Like, I even trust, like, if I can't be there for whatever reason, kids know what to do. They
Yeah.
know, get off the bus, they know how to shake hands, they know how to ask the questions. But that comes from a lot of prepping. But those soft skills are what the world needs so much of right now. And
Mhm.
so practicality.
Yeah, especially with technology.
Yep.
Yeah. And technology makes it possible to have guests in your classroom that aren't close to
Right.
you either. And you can
Yes.
bring in other people too. So
Yes.
everyone is so much more accessible now than they used to be. Advisory committees are a part of current technical education. And I would say, probably in my experience, 90% of teachers really don't know what to do with that because it's not really taught and it's like thrown at you like you have to have one of these, but we're not going to tell you how to do it.
Right.
So, how have you done that?
Yeah. So we just take, again, we band together as a career and tech ed department. We think of our industry leaders that parallel well with us. The cool part for us, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. All of ours overlap. Are you going to call them or should I call them? No, I'll call them because I just was with them last week. So as a career and tech ed department, all of our leaders really span all of our areas, which is super cool. So we have the problem of even limiting it. Like, we bring in 3 or 4 people from what we're going to call our area. We have added former students to that advocacy list. We have added our administrators to that so they know what's going. We try to overlap with 1 or 2 school board members who then are representing industries. So our advisory committee has grown to 20 plus members.
Wow.
We try to meet twice. We meet very intentionally once in a meeting format, but they're also engaged with our classrooms. They end up being there almost monthly in some capacity. So we really feel strongly about that. And we get excited about teaching other departments about it. It's required as a current tech ed program, but it's just fun to share that with other departments just because it just makes us that much stronger.
And how has that changed your programs? Because I think that's where a lot of people are like, what's the point of this? Like, I feel like we do the thing, we meet once or twice a year to check it off our list.
Yeah.
Like, I have
Yep.
to do this. Here we go. But how have you found a way to make it really meaningful? How did you help the people representing industry on your advisory committee know like the importance and how they're involved and all those types of things?
So their voice is really powerful, arguably even more than ours. And so we ask for intentional things we can do different, things we should be teaching, so we can alter our curriculum to meet the ever changing needs of our community. We teach them about getting in with the administrators, getting in with school board members. We give them talking points. This year, we're adding kind of a talent list. What are their time, talent, and energy pieces where we could then say, oh, well, they're really passionate about soft skills. Here's how we could bring them into our classrooms. So we're going to ask for an inventory, if you will, of their talents or their passions. So someone who might not even be involved with investing, but is super passionate about investing, I could bring them into personal finance. So we're going to involve them more in our classrooms, but beyond what they already are doing, or how they can then help advocate at a local level. Or even if they're passionate at a state level, get them down to St. Paul, or I'll bring them with to Washington, D.C. So, like, we want their voice heard because they truly are on. I feel like I'm on the front lines. They're on the front lines. They're the ones in the coffee shops. They're talking about it at church. Those are the people who can help us with a positive narrative and debunk anything negative.
Absolutely. Jenny, have you found anything that is helpful in terms of finding the right person at a certain business or industry? Because I think sometimes that's what intimidates others too, is it'd be really great if we had this fabrication business in town be on our advisory committee, but who do you choose? Is it the CEO? Is it their marketing expert? Like, how do you go about finding the right fit?
We like when they span all of our areas, right? A manufacturing business, if they bring in, say, the marketing or HR people, both people who are on our advisory committee, they're stewards of their story, but they come at it with another layer or another lens. So when we can get that double dip approach, that's huge. That's what we have found to be successful. We love former students. I think about a third of our committee is made up of former students, so alumni. Going back to what I talked about earlier about we want to be part of a community that kids want to come back to, and now they are industry professionals back in our community. So we work hard at that, like deep rooted, like they're Morris Tigers, they're Stevens County residents, and now they're back. So that's really powerful, and they're raising kids, right? So then they know the importance of this. Those are good ones. Former students who are back. They're great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The student organization piece of career and technical education is there for all areas of career and tech ed. And career and tech ed is much bigger than what it is just in Morris. There's a lot of areas that not every school has. That's just part of the deal. And in Morris, you have a few different areas of career and technical education. And there are opportunities for student organizations to form and to do work to enhance what they're learning in the classroom. So what do you feel is the true intention of a student organization in career and technical education? Because it's a special thing where it's not an curricular. So talk a little bit about how that can really help students in a rural community connect with their community.
Oh, that's where I get really passionate.
As if we didn't think you were already.
Well, I know you get it.
We were unsure.
Yeah, we were really wavering on that one.
I have a longstanding tradition at being part of Business Professionals of America. And although I've stepped away from the advisor role, I'm still very much in the cheerleader role. We have a strong BPA program. We had a FCCLA program, which is paired with the FACS department. And that's ebbed and flowed a bit, but it's still out there. We just got to revamp it a bit. And certainly FFA is near and dear to my heart now as a mom and certainly a cheerleader. And I've been blessed to be able to coach a few teams in the recent years just because they parallel so well with business.
My children have been benefactories of Jenny's amazingness in FFA
They
as
have.
well.
And so there it comes again, right? It's that deep rooted piece that although I'm not the ag teacher, I certainly get excited about blue and gold and everything that the FFA organization stands for. And I just get teary eyed watching them have learned it in my classroom. And then they end up on that grand FFA stage. And that's like the bookends, right? But it's all those small moments. Like it's the 7:30 meetings. It's, oh, remember when we talked about that in digital media? Now here it comes again. Or pairing them, I'll use the ag communications team as an example, pairing them with our English teacher so that English teacher sees the power of CTE and that student organization just flourishing. And probably the most exciting, I couldn't even be there because I had a speaking engagement because of my new role. And so I said, well, you're competing in a day. I'm going to bring in the big guns. So I brought in a newspaper editor who has a long-standing tradition in our hometown, Natasha, and he was blown away with the professionalism of these four boys. I could tell right away who they were. They shook my hand. They met me in the office. They greeted me with a thank you card and a gift card. And then we sat down and then they really surprised me on the quality of their work. And I had never worked with him professionally, the newspaper editor, but here he came, drove over from a neighboring rural community, met with the boys, was anxious to hear how they were doing at their state competition the next day, and just said, I wasn't surprised at all that they represented FFA because they are absolute stewards of that organization. And it filled him up. He's like, I didn't have that opportunity before. And I thought you were a little crazy inviting me over. And that's just what I've become immune to. I'm just like, no, they need you. And they surprised him in a really great way. And so I bring in a stranger. He has no idea what's going on. The boys do and just crush it, right? And so that's the secret sauce of all of this, that I'm not even their ag teacher, I'm their business teacher.
But that's the point. That's the point.
That's the secret
The
ingredient.
point.
Yes.
And that's what, like, all the people listening to this, like, whether they're teachers or community members, alumni of some organization, it
Yep.
doesn't matter who they are. Like, collaboration is like, that's what I see with you. I get to watch from the bleachers all the
Right.
time because my son's goal before he graduates, which is this spring, is to take every single Jenny Mars class. Like that.
Competes.
And he bleeds FFA and he loves farming. That is his whole life. But he sees that you're a teacher that believes in everything. And I think to me, that is where a lot of people can learn from you in a rural community is collaboration is everything.
Well, and Jenny, it's no wonder why you won this award when collaboration is the
Duh.
secret sauce, right? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
you
is.
aren't just a business teacher. You are a cheerleader for all of these other orgs in
Yep.
CTE. It is obvious your name is written all over this, and that's huge.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's where I have to be better at reflecting on that because I become a little immune to it. That's just who I am. And so I
Mhm.
have to learn to celebrate that. And the kids are the best ones on that check. They're like,
Oh, yeah.
that's a big deal. And we're you too, just like you're proud of us. But again, I don't know where the magic happens to get them ready for that magical moment, but to hear from a professional who's not even part of our community to recognize that and to celebrate that in those 4 young men, that's really crazy cool.
It is.
It is so crazy cool.
It is.
It is
And I
so
wasn't
crazy
even
cool.
there. Like, that's the best part. Like, I trusted them to
Mhm.
like do the right thing, and
Yep.
they crushed it.
Yeah. You
And that
did
happens
that.
again and again.
Yep.
It happens again and again. Yeah.
So don't forget all the educators who are listening and mentors and coaches. Don't forget to celebrate those moments. That is huge.
Absolutely.
They keep you
Okay,
going.
I have one more question before the final question. Becca, can I ask one more question before you
Yes.
ask the final question? Okay. Burnout is real. And I know in agricultural education, I've been there. I'm guessing both of you have been there. Okay.
Yeah.
So burnout is big. And a lot of rural CTE teachers have to teach many different classes in a day. And it's not like other teachers. In some cases, it is. Some small schools, like the English teacher teaches every grade. So, like, I feel for them too. So, no matter who you are in a rural area, even people not in the school, to understand what is burnout and how have you learned how to manage that. I know what you do because my children are your students. I've seen what you can do, Jenny, and I want you to talk about what you've learned throughout your many years of teaching to help people prioritize and not burn out and spread the work. How do you do it?
So, one thing that I believe to my core is we have to take care of each other as people before our titles. I have to take care of them as young adults before them as students. And the burnout happens when we don't do the same for ourselves. So, I have to remember that I am a person, I'm a mom, I am like just wading through this crazy world as an adult before I am a teacher. Because when all of that happens, it puts us all on the same playing field. Okay. So that's one big thing. Vulnerability is huge in a professional way. So I have to be vulnerable. I have to be able to say, you know what? That lesson didn't go how I had hoped. Let's look at some other options. Or being vulnerable enough to send them into a business we've never been to. Like, to have that vulnerability is important, but probably what's at the core of what I do are not my words. They come from a gentleman named Brian Skavnak. He's a fellow Minnesotan, which is super cool. And I have a really cool backstory that has exploded from this. His words are be the nice kid. Some kids are better at sports than you. Some kids have cooler clothes than you. It doesn't matter. You have your thing too. Be the kid who can get along, be the kid, and it goes back to that human spirit. Be the nice kid. It's on my wall in my classroom, giant letters to remind them daily and to remind myself daily. And it's part of my syllabus. I read it to them as often as I can. I even interchange words like some adults have cooler clothes than you. Some adults are better at sports than you. It doesn't matter. You have your thing too. Be the adult who can get along. Be the nice adult. And I will hear kids redirecting icky behavior with words like, hey, remember, be the nice kid. She wants us to be the nice kid. So it reins in on that human spirit, taking care of the human spirit. Now, this was total coincidence, karma, whatever you want to call it, divine intervention. I am sitting at the Nashville airport. We had just gotten our gates switched. And my husband says, I think I just ran into the nice kid guy. I'm like, what? Well, he's got a shirt that says be the nice kid. Here he came around the corner.
No.
I meet the guy. This is fangirl moment because this is who I am to my inner DNA core. And sure enough, it was Brian Skavnak meeting me by accident in an airport gate. Fast forward, in his true nice kid spirit, he Zoomed with one of my classes, sent them an entire box of merch so now we are all
Oh,
being nice kid.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so it's the living out of those very simple words that keep me going. And when I don't feel like a nice kid, I just have to remind myself, I gotta be the nice kid too. Like I'm the mantra of this, the karma of this. And it has created a culture within my classroom where I'll have kids coming up to me. So and so is not nice other places, but when he or she walks into your room, changes, light switch flip. Like that human spirit before a title,
yep.
it's so special. And
That just makes
Yeah.
my heart happy. Makes my heart
well,
happy.
and if I'm constantly redirecting icky behavior, which isn't a problem because we all are in this nice kid subculture when they walk into my room,
Mhm.
like I can't teach them all the cool things. We can't fly drones. We can't write business plans. We can't make financial statements if I'm redirecting icky behavior. But
Yeah.
they all know we're taking care of the human spirit and it's a two-way street. So their teacher doesn't go crazy. And the nice kid concept constantly reigns true. And now we just have cool merch to prove it.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
sounds like a really great podcast.
it really does.
We might need contact information.
Yeah.
Oh, so cool. So
Cool. I think it's always remarkable to me when CTE teachers talk about how different their lives are than that of a core subject teacher. And I think part of the reason you just hit the nail on the head when you said, I give them expectations. Like they know when they walk into my
Mhm.
room that they need to live to this next level. You're doing that on a daily basis. Like that is enough to reflect on and be proud of. But you're over here kicking butt in so many other ways, Jenny.
But
We're so
it's, I think, well, thank you. You're kind. But it's the simplicity of it. It's be the nice kid. That's something everybody can do.
yeah.
And if
Mhm.
it's the nice kid means I should just be quiet because I know I'm going to spout my mouth off like that, and
yeah, that's a good quality to learn to have.
Yeah.
it
Right.
is. And so it has nothing to do with curriculum. It has nothing to do with content. It has just human spirit content attached to it. And it's something everybody can do. Even if
Yeah.
they're a reader, writer, bad at math, they can all be nice. The trust that happens and the respect that happens in that culture is huge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you love it.
I know. It's so good.
Wow.
So good.
So good. So good.
This is one of those conversations that we could keep diving into. And I feel like
Yeah,
people could
forever.
pull, like, okay, I thought about quitting teaching, but you just inspired me to do this. Like, that's the kind of responses I expect from this one. It's just so good. Thank you for filling our buckets. I know that our listeners are going to feel similar things from this as well. Jenny, we always ask this question at the end of our conversations. Before we want to know how to get a hold of you, or if there's any way that we can keep up with all of the wonderful things going on with your award and positions that you hold now, we want to know, how are you keeping it rural?
I go back to that 5-year-old kid that got on the bus. I ran between the corn rows to jump on that school bus. And when I can have that same vibrancy and tenacity of a 5-year-old kid who went to her rural school and came back to her dairy farm to start her very first teaching job in that classroom upstairs that I built, the fact that I can still be doing it nearly 40 years later is super inspiring. That grit and tenacity that it takes to be a rural teacher reigns true daily. And it's just crazy to me that I think that 40 years ago is when I started this gig. I love that kids want to come back to our community. And the fact that I am normalizing that or maybe breaking down any stigmas that the grass is greener somewhere else. No, the grass is greener where you water it. And if I can give kids the hose or the watering can to keep their own grass greener in their rural communities, that's when the magic happens. I guess making sure kids know
good.
the grass is greener where you water it. And whether that's right here or a neighboring county, or even if it is something in, a metro area, there's still those little subcultures, whether it's in your school or your church or your neighborhood, that gives it that rural feel. I think it's important to know that rural concept can be found in nearly any nook of our country. So
Yeah.
just keep watering that grass is what I think.
So many good t-shirt
Absolutely.
ideas, honestly.
Yes. Oh, this is so good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jenny, what are some of the things coming up related to your award, or how can we keep following your
Yes.
lovely journey?
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give you guys some homework, whether it's the two of you or your listeners. I don't want anyone to take for granted how fabulous their rural community is, because I think we're really bad at thinking that it is greener somewhere else. So my
Mhm.
hope for you, or my challenge for everybody, is think of your rural story as a postcard. What would it look like? What would it say?
That's a good
And
assignment.
I like that.
be intentional about it, whether it's putting the pen to paper or even just thinking about it. What does it look like? And what does that rural story say? And so that's item number one. What does your rural postcard look like and say? Think about it, or actually draw one, if you will. Next, I am doing a little bit of statewide advocacy coming up in January. Our program, specifically our drone program, was selected to be part of the Minnesota School Board Association state conference. And so we'll be one of their exhibitors, literally flying drones
Very cool.
around. Yes. And so then I'll be able to then continue that rural advocacy story in downtown Minneapolis, which I think is
Woohoo.
a storm of excitement. I am taking that what would your rural postcard advocacy say to a few of our southwestern school districts. I'm going to be part of the MERV Ed, which is an acronym that I don't remember what it stands for exactly, but it's a sector of our state that brings all of the rural schools together for a winter conference. And so I'll be teaching
Cool.
that as well. I was just asked to be part of the Minnesota Rural Educators process to find the next version of me. So I'll be part of their team to help find the Minnesota Educators of Excellence for 2024. And I am vying for a spot on the Minnesota Rural Educators board.
So many good things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
whether I have a seat on the board, I told them, even if I don't make the cut, I'm loud and you're not going to be able to get rid of me. So just
Woohoo.
not advocacy. There will be some potential visits to St. Paul and Washington, D.C. to visit with politicians about everything rural, about everything career and tech ed. So that is really exciting. A few different congressional people have reached out to me at both the state and national level. So
Mhm.
that's really exciting. I'm going to have to brush up on my social studies skills a little bit before I jump into those arenas. But that, again, I don't want to plateau. I don't want to collect dust. So that's
Right.
areas of growth for me, which I'm super excited about. But most importantly, and I said this before any award was handed to me, I don't want to forget about the four walls of my classroom and my household. So taking good care of my family and my students will always be number one, and pushing them to grow. So that's my daily hustle that I get really excited about.
Oh,
That's what's coming
awesome.
up.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was so good. I think lots of really good little nuggets for lots
Yeah.
of different people, depending on their situation,
Yeah.
for sure.
Thank you for having me.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Keeping It Rural listeners, you know where to find us. You know how to follow Jenny's journey. And I hope that you were inspired by not just the nuggets, but the pure bars of gold that she shared with us today. If we were all lucky enough to be students in Mrs. Mars' classroom, I think that we would be living some greener lives out there too. So thank you for all that you give to us and to the world of education, not just to your students, but everyone that you touch out there. Keeping it rural until next time. We'll see you later.
Bye.
It's not a party without you there. Follow our crazy on Facebook and Instagram, and be sure to check out all episodes and extras at keepinitruralgirls.com.
Until next time, keep it rural.
It's time to pour on the fire and call in the dogs. That's all, folks.